A 90-year-old's desperate fight to save her dogs from the ice. She was 90 years old, and the temperature outside had dropped to negative 23 degrees Fahrenheit.
The wind was
moving at 31 miles per hour across the open plain,
driving the wind chill
down to what meteorologists would later calculate as negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit. A thermal assault on exposed biological tissue so severe that unprotected skin reaches frostbite threshold in under 4 minutes. And yet she moved. Not quickly, not with the fluid economy of youth, but with something far more durable than speed. The accumulated mechanical knowledge of 9 decades spent reading ice, reading wind, and reading the living creatures that depended entirely on her judgment to survive the night. Her name does not matter as much as her story. What matters is the decision she made when the storm arrived without warning. When the temperature collapsed faster than any forecast had predicted,
and when the sound of her dogs,
6 of them ranging from 42 pounds to 87 pounds of muscle, fat and fur, shifted from the low rhythmic breathing of sleep into the high anxious frequencies of animals beginning to register genuine thermal distress.
That sound, to someone who has spent a lifetime alongside working dogs in a northern climate, is not merely an emotional trigger.
It is a
diagnostic signal.
It is data.
And she had learned over the course of more years than most people have been alive
exactly what that data demanded in response. What followed over the next 6 hours
was not a miracle.
It was not luck.
It was the systematic application of knowledge so old that its origins dissolve into the prehistoric record. Knowledge about insulation, about radiant heat, about the thermodynamic properties of densely packed biological fiber, about the structural logic of enclosed shared body heat environments, about caloric density and metabolic output as engineering variables in a survival equation. She was not performing a heroic act in the Hollywood sense of the word. She was executing a protocol ancient enough to predate written language, refined enough to remain relevant in the 21st century, and precise enough that its failure at any single step would have meant the death of animals she had raised from puppies. Animals whose skeletal and muscular architecture she understood the way a shipwright understands timber.
Not abstractly,
but through years of direct physical contact with the living material itself.
This is the story of that night. But it is also the story of everything that night contained without announcing itself.
The 10,000 years of trial and error compressed into the instincts of one woman. The Ice Age engineering principles that never actually left human practice.
They simply became invisible inside the walls of
modern construction.
The irreducible
logic of thermal management that connects a woolly mammoth hunter crouching over a fire pit in a permafrost landscape 14,000 years ago to a 90-year-old woman dragging insulating material across a frozen yard at 2 in the morning in the 21st century. The distance between those two figures, measured in calendar time, is vast. Measured in the physics of heat retention, in the biomechanics of shelter construction, in the strategic calculus of keeping warm bodies alive when the environment is actively working to kill them, that distance is almost nothing at all. The principles are identical. The stakes are identical. Only the tools have changed, and even that, as this story will demonstrate, is less true than we are comfortable admitting.
But as a physical
to understand what she did, you first have to understand what cold actually is, not as a sensation, not as a weather condition, but as a physical process with specific vectors of attack, specific rates of penetration through different materials, and specific biological thresholds that, once crossed, trigger cascading systemic failures in warm-blooded organisms. Cold is not a presence. Cold is an absence, the absence of thermal energy. And it moves with absolute relentless efficiency into any system that contains more heat than its surroundings. Your body, at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, is a thermal reservoir in a world that wants to drain it. Every material you place between your core temperature and the external environment is a negotiation between your biology and the second law of thermodynamics. Insulation does not generate heat. It slows the rate at which heat escapes. That distinction is not semantic. It is the entire engineering foundation upon which every survival shelter ever constructed by human hands has been built. From the mammoth bone longhouses of the Ukrainian steppe to the double-walled polystyrene panels of contemporary cold storage architecture. At negative 23 degrees Fahrenheit, with a wind moving at 31 miles per hour, the thermal gradient between a dog's core body temperature, approximately 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit for a healthy canine, and the external air mass represents a differential of 124.5 degrees. That differential is not static. It is a pressure. It pushes continuously, relentlessly, through fur, through skin, through the subcutaneous fat layer, into muscle tissue, toward the organs that cannot tolerate temperature drops of more than a few degrees without beginning to fail. A dog's fur coat, even a thick double-coated breed optimized for cold climates, provides a specific and finite degree of thermal resistance, measurable in what engineers call R-value, the resistance to heat flow per unit of surface area. Under static conditions with no wind, a well-conditioned working dog can tolerate extraordinary cold. But wind destroys the insulating value of fur by physically penetrating the fiber matrix, collapsing the air pockets that provide the actual thermal resistance, and accelerating convective heat loss at the skin surface by a factor that scales non-linearly with wind speed.
Until either the wind stopped, the temperature rose, or someone intervened with a material solution.
At 31 miles per hour, the effective insulating value of a dog's coat drops to a fraction of its calm air performance. The dogs were not merely cold, they were losing thermal energy faster than their metabolic systems could replace it, and they would continue to lose it at an accelerating rate until either the wind stopped, the temperature rose, or someone intervened with a material solution. She intervened with a material solution, and the material solution she reached for in the darkness of a frozen yard at 2 in the morning was one that would have been immediately recognizable to every human being who survived a northern winter before the invention of central heating, before the invention of insulated construction panels, before the invention of any technology more recent than approximately 12,000 years old. She reached for mass. She reached for layering. She reached for the compression of biological fiber into a geometry that maximized the ratio of enclosed volume to exposed surface area. She reached, in other words, for the same fundamental engineering logic that allowed anatomically modern humans to survive the last glacial maximum in landscapes where the average winter temperature was lower than anything she was facing that night.